I think this moment at the very end of the episode is what brings us in the Fox universe, what brings us in the Sony universe, what brings us in the Spider-Verse, what brings us in all the narrative that is going to be tied into Deadpool 3, Kang Dynasty, Secret Wars, but even more so, I think we're going to start to see the leaking of the timelines in the Marvels.
Welcome back to the Breakroom. Episode 4 of Loki Season 2 is the best episode of Marvel TV since ever?
Maybe. What about that Moon Knight finale?
No, pass. Last night, Eric, Voss, Maud, Garrett, and Tommy Bechtel dove into the wild spaghetti ending. And so today we're kind of covering the other questions. These are all of our lingering questions about Episode 4 of Loki Season 2. Questions like, is OB just a Kang variant?
Whoa. No.
I don't know. Was he who remains playing Ravonna the whole time?
The whole time?
And was like, I'm going to wipe your memory anyways. I don't care if you think I love you. Or was there something there?
They like really fall in love, and that's what scared him the most.
Right, that's right. How often do the memories of the people in the TVA get wiped?
Right.
He said it kind of casually. And Miss Minutes was like, are you sure?
Wait,
Seems kind of backward.
So let's circle back to that moment.
Okay, great. Yeah. We're going to talk about all that stuff. I'm John Costa. Joining me today, Coy Jandreau.
Howdy. Very excited to be here. Very excited for Daredevil now for the first time in a little while. I've been concerned for a while, but now, hype.
That has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. And Brandon Barrick.
I'm also very excited for Daredevil.
Got
a lot of hype now. I was still excited for it coming back.
Yeah.
But now, I'm glad that because of the writer's strike, Disney has to shape up and get some showrunners for these shows.
It is nice writers. That they were like, we'll fix it, okay?
I think it's good.
Yeah, you'll fix it because now you have to fix it.
I think looking at problems in real time and solving them, you can only release it once.
Yeah.
I think it's very healthy for a studio the size of Marvel to go we got some Band-Aids to check.
In a world where this writer's strike didn't happen, and the actor's strike that is still going on,
we'd get Daredevil episode
4. Would Disney and Marvel have taken the time to be like, you know what, these shows aren't hitting. Secret Invasion comes out just like it came out. And I think that was maybe an impetus for a lot of interesting articles and editorials about what's going on. These shows aren't working. They're a mess. Blah, blah, blah. In a world where the strike's not going on and forcing their hand a little bit, does Disney still and Marvel make these changes?
I think it's actually tying into this episode. I think Disney does right the ship. I just think the steering would have taken longer. I think overall, Kevin Feige and Bob Iger are a different animal than Kevin Feige and Chapek. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the decisions we're seeing, some of it might be finger pointing, but it does seem to be Chapek wanting 5 properties a year and really rushing stuff out. I think eventually it isn't as bad as a lot of people are wanting to say it is, because it's popular to attack a very popular thing. The narrative is there. But I'd say their consistency has dipped. Even if you look at 10 properties, 2 being rough, even if you put out 20 properties and 4 are rough, I think the rougher ones are worse than, Dark World was 1 blight on Phase 2. I think they've had more than double the blights on Phase 4.
Yeah.
So I think overall they would have started to see the inconsistency. We read in that article Kevin Feige really values Rotten Tomatoes score. I think with enough of those he'd want to shift that.
That's a bad idea.
Stop looking at Rotten Tomatoes. Let an aggregated score affect your view on any of your work. Art should not be measured
I don't like when movies promote their Rotten Tomato certified fresh things.
Please like this video because I live and die by the like.
Please, we do care about you aggregating R. We need the validation.
Please.
But I think Loki's a great example of everybody's like, oh my god, Marvel's back. I'm like, Guardians 3 was 2 months ago.
Right.
And they're like, oh my god, nothing good in Phase 4. I'm like, Shang-Chi's better.
Sean, thank you.
It's not all bad. So Loki's a great example of, I think they would have looked at Daredevil like a Secret Invasion and oh no, but now we get a good Daredevil.
Yeah. We are severely off topic. Okay, I'm gonna rein this in a little bit. I'm bringing this back. Here's the first thing I want to ask you guys. Just general impressions of this episode.
Okay. I really liked the episode a lot. I think episodes 2, less so 3, but 2 was really confusing. It kind of starts confusing. It takes a second to catch up. You don't really know, and then you get there, right? But I liked a lot of 2. 3 was great, a lot of fun, but still a little kind of all over the place. 4 was very interesting. Just, the big swing at the end of killing Victor Timely, you're like, oh, okay. That was surprising. Having the loom explode, again, very surprising. Where do we go from here? I don't know. We're literally a blank slate now. I really liked episode 4?
I think 4 is my favorite of the season. I think Loki is my favorite Marvel Disney Plus show. Season 1 had just edged out WandaVision for me because it stuck the landing, I thought, better than season 1 of WandaVision. And season 2, I think, had the highest stakes of the shows because it is following up, in my opinion, the best. And it's also the first season 2. And it's one of the only legacy characters that's getting long form.
Right.
It's a lot. But I do think deciding to kind of invert some of the power structure. In the first season, you've got Owen Wilson kind of leading Loki around. This one, you got Loki kind of leading Owen Wilson around. He's the one more informed because he's met He Who Remains versus Owen Wilson in the first season TVA. But you still got the relationship dynamic. So it's a smart way to sequelize. You're not just bigger, bigger, bigger for the sake of it, but you are able to go bigger narratively while also keeping some familiar narrative. And I love that the first 4 episodes are very intentionally an Ouroboros. It's a cycle. It goes in and out of itself. And I think building a structure in that way is genius because episode 4 of Marvel is always like this big moment. It's the Shield beheading. It's a big reveal in WandaVision. There's a lot of things that episode 4 stands up for, and I love the idea that now with this episode 4, we're kind of back to the beginning of episode 1, but with a lot more narrative in our heads as we're diving into, I think, what we're going to introduce, the Kang of the actual namesake, not a He Who Remains, not a Victor Timely. I do think we're about to get to the point where a Kang that will impact the MCU is relevant because we've completed this one journey with a blank slate, but I also think on a bigger scale, the end of episode 4, in my crazy tinfoil hat opinion, is the bigger event that ties into the death of He Who Remains that caused the incident that everyone said would be important. I think this moment at the very end of the episode is what brings us in the Fox universe, what brings us in the Sony universe, what brings us in the Spider-Verse, what brings us in all the narrative that is going to be tied into Deadpool 3, Kang Dynasty, Secret Wars. But even more so, I think we're going to start to see the leaking of the timelines in the Marvels. I think events that occurred in this episode are going to be all the cameos we wanted at a Multiverse of Madness, but even more importantly, an actual narrative storyline that's going to clean up the MCU that allows the big reset of everything that I think comes in Secret Wars.
If Kamala Khan is walking around on the Saber Station and there's a hot cocoa machine, we know we're in trouble. Right?
Yeah, we know delicious.
We have a spoilers Slack channel at New Rockstars, and this was the one that had the most activity afterward. It was everyone kind of doing a what the fuck just happened. So we at New Rockstars had a ton of fun with this episode, and I can't wait to see what happens in episode 5 because a little behind the scenes stuff. Brandon and I had a call with someone, and they said that episode 5, and this person,
their name was Fevin Kaigi.
And they said episode 5 was like the big episode.
Ooh.
So after watching episode 4, I'm like, oh, what does that mean?
And I think in a post Breaking Bad, post Game of Thrones world,
That
penultimate
penultimate
episodes are usually the big ones.
Because 6 kind of feels like it's cleaning up and setting up for whatever's next.
Right.
It's kind of like a denouement in Marvel. It allows you to breathe a little, but it also launches the next thing. So, I mean, I think there's a reason they sent 1 through 4 out to press, and then they, held off on 5.
And I guess one of my complaints about Marvel TV in general right now has been like, and I think a lot of people feel this, and actually Disney Plus, so including Star Wars, they leave too much shit for that last episode. It's just like too much to wrap up. And it's like, oh, no, you can wrap up a storyline in episode 5. You don't have to save it for the last episode. You can tie up a string and then focus on something more important in the next episode. Okay, so I want to get
just
to
him on a jet ski the whole time. I'm in.
I'm in for that too. That's a post-credit scene, and the post-credit scene should be longer than the episode. I want to get into some of our questions. Here's the thing, right? So OB and Victor Timely meet for the first time in this episode, and they have this weird snake eating its tail moment, Ouroboros, whatever. And that sort of got us thinking, like, okay, clearly OB has been at the TVA for a very long time and is probably more instrumental to its creation than maybe we thought at the beginning.
Yeah, he wrote the manual.
But it also sounds like, the manual was the inspiration for the TVA. It's just like it's an Ouroboros. It's an Ouroboros.
Because there are weird things, right? Like he needs He Who Remains aura, temporal aura to open the doors, but doesn't know that, like discovers that, right? You know what I mean? Like he didn't know it immediately. He's like, well, here's the problem. I can't do this without an aura, and we don't have it. Or it's like,
well, because he's never needed it. Miss Minutes has been able to.
Sure, and you can interpret that Miss Minutes has changed things while he was not. He was only checking every couple hundred years for diagnostics or whatever. Also, like, he doesn't know how to fix the loom that was kind of a surprise to him.
And Victor Timely had like the missing puzzle piece, right?
So, but he also doesn't recognize Victor Timely.
He doesn't at first, right? And he has to open the book to, but
because he says like, I worked with a guy named Victor Timely, and he's like, wait a second,
right.
Victor. And I don't know if that's just because he's been alive for so long. It takes a while for the thoughts to get there.
We're gonna get to some like brain stuff in a second, because we want to talk about the memory wiping.
Yeah.
OB seems to be not having his memory wiped.
Right.
But you're right. He is sort of like slow to remember things. He was sort of like fuzzy when Mobius and Loki were talking to him in episode 1. Not only maybe because Loki was...
It takes time. The memory had to get across a few hundred years of time.
But also, I think at the beginning of that conversation, and then he was correcting Mobius about how they had met. So I guess Eric is going to put out a video that's coming out on the channel, on the Rockstars channel tomorrow, that is just sort of a look at like who was first between Obi and Kang. But I just kind of want to ask, like, could he be a variant of Kang or an originator of Kang? And you had some interesting takes before we started the episode.
Yeah, I mean, cool. And I think Eric will talk about this in his video too, but one idea he brought up was kind of the idea that in the comics, He Who Remains is a TVA employee. It's not a Kang. It's like the last TVA employee just keeping the thing running, which kind of sounds like OB, right? And if there was a TVA before the Multiversal War, and a Kang came into 616 and finds the TVA and is like, great, this is mine now. And kind of takes over and wipes OB from there, wipes him then, but then from then on, as Victor Timely or whatever teaches him how to take the TVA from what it is and change it into what it is now, from what it was to what it is now. Because there's a lot of weirdness with like the TVA. The technology has stopped in a weird way. It has that kind of 70s
in a time, right? Yeah.
pastiche. But we saw from like the first episode, right, when Loki goes back, he's time slipping.
Still,
there was a chrono monitor, right? But it was much more simplistic. It was just a couple of lights, and then when you jump to the future, the chronometer or whatever it's called, it's bigger. It's more detailed, but it's still kind of like 70s graphics. So there was some evolution, and then the evolution stopped.
Well, and you get a little bit of that too when Miss Minutes is rebooted.
Right.
It's like, is that a joke that they're doing that she was rebooted and she goes kind of like a little bit more rudimentary, or is that real and she started really simple?
Because it started. I inferred from her conversation with Victor Timely in episode 3 that like you built me as like a Kang built me as just to play chess with, and I kept evolving.
Right.
And that was the first form. Miss Minutes was a thing that told you the time and eventually could play chess with you.
So that's what I think OB is. I think he is a mirror to Kang. I don't think he's a variant. I think much like Miss Minutes describes how she was invented as a way for him to keep his mind going with chess, I think the Ouroboros that is OB is something that Kang creates in order for him to finish his thoughts. He needs something to complete the idea he's had. So it's like when you're having a discussion, it's better in a dialogue.
It's ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I think OB is literally the other side of Kang's mental process that he creates in order to like, oh, this is what I needed, this is what I wasn't thinking, this is what I wasn't clear on, because the data would be not necessarily rendered in real time if there are multiple parallel timelines. It's not like Loki jumping back through the timeline and then OB being able to remember, because that's a linear path on the same timeline. So if you're following this timeline, but if a Kang knows something here and another Kang knows something here and another one knows something here, I think OB is a nexus point for them all to have this idea. So when he talks to OB, oh wait, this is what the other Kangs were able to extrapolate.
We need to get you OB's little figurines and the
guys, I'll make you a chart.
You can draw it.
No, but I legit think that like there's a nexus point that is OB at the center of the TVA, which is outside of time, and that allows all the different Kangs to mirror all their thoughts, and they coalesce through OB, and then he's able to have these epiphanies of how to solve these giant problems.
But to go along with that, like I don't think that you can do this narratively because they already did it in season 1, but wouldn't it be fun if someone hucked a blade at Ouroboros' head and it came off similar to the Timekeepers?
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that because you've already done it, but like I want him to just be another Kang illusion. Or
well, is it possible that He Who Remains, and this is maybe a little tricky with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but things could be rewritten. OB is the only Kang, right? And these Victor Timeleys and these Kangs, they are things that he's putting out there to throw people off the scent. right? And he is really just sitting back and watching it all and actually hiding there. And these other Kangs are just like a front. And he's the actual Kang. But he's going through time. He's finding these little Victor Timeleys. He's planting them all over the multiverse.
It does seem like at least He Who Remains and the version of the TVA that he's created has multiple layers of deception.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's not necessarily the Kang that we got in Quantumania, but Timely, I think, demonstrated a little bit of that con man stuff when he was in Chicago. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if someone, if we're gonna find out that something that we know isn't true exactly or whatever.
There were several moments in this episode where you think he's ahead of them, like when he's captured by Brad, right, and taken to Miss Minutes and Ravonna, and he's like, "I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna make you very happy." And then we later see he's stalling, but in that first moment, you're like, "Oh, he wanted to get here. Like this is all part of the plan." Blah blah blah. Same thing with like when I forget the gentleman's name, D23 or
D90.
D90. He has the hot chocolate. He goes to take it. He doesn't take a sip. He hands it to him. And
just to make sure that it's not crickets or something?
Well, I don't know why it feels like he intentionally wants to get out of the room that he's in.
Yeah.
When the Tempad thing is happening. The guy's like, I'll take him. Right? It all seems very suspicious. He gets the thing, he goes to take, he doesn't take a sip, he hands it to D90, D90's like, no, he's like, you must, or whatever. And he does it, and he does a little like, like a little thing. But like, why? If he was obsessed, why wouldn't he take the chocolate? And then like D90, gets pruned. You think it's the chocolate, but it's not, right? So it's like there are a couple of those moments where you think he has the upper hand. I thought it was like the hot chocolate made him get pruned. I don't know. There were a couple of moments where you think he has the upper hand, but then it's revealed at the end he doesn't.
Right.
So I don't know. The whole time I was kind of thinking like, what is going on here? Like, who is playing who? It is all very suspicious.
So speaking of who's playing who, we have that moment at the very beginning of the episode where Miss Minutes tells the secret to Ravonna, and she has her little like weird looking glass thing in the rubble of the Citadel.
I love how small she made it.
It's so great.
Was that always an option that she could just physically put that there? Anyways, it was very cool to see Ravonna's big face staring at them. So my question for that is, we see more of the conversation that we heard in episode 1. It's a little bit more flirtatious. It seems like there may be an item, old-timey phrase. And then kind of maybe a little mournfully or whatever you want to say, asks Miss Minutes to wipe her memory and wipe everyone's memory.
Well, yeah, because he's like, Protocol 42, and she's like, is it time?
Well,
and he said, because I don't remember the exact phrasing.
To me, she seemed a little hesitant.
Who, Miss Minutes?
Yeah.
She wanted to be clear. It did seem like, you mean this, right? Well, it was almost like she was prodding him to say, wipe Ravonna's mind. Because isn't it Miss Minutes says, like, do you want to wipe her memories? Or does he say wipe her memories, wipe all their memories?
I'd have to go back and look.
Because it seemed like he couldn't say it.
There is a first moment where it's just going to be Ravonna's memory, and then he clarifies.
And if it's Miss Minutes being like, wipe her memory, he's like, wipe all their memories.
That's interesting.
Because he might legitimately love her, and is like, I can't say it. I'm doing it to everyone, and it's how it's got to be. That's how it's got to be.
So that's my question: was there ever anything there between them, or was he playing her the whole time and just sort of like saw, hey, maybe this is what she wants. She wants a partnership. She wants to feel important. She wants a pedestal to be put on, and I need her help now, and I'm just going to discard her when I'm done.
I think the love is real, but I think something happens later on in the timeline where he finds that he has to be alone.
Yeah.
I think he loves her, and I think the great sorrow of Kang is that he has to lose her in every timeline. So I think we see something either in this or in Kang Dynasty or somewhere down the line that reveals that he is in love with her, he wants her as a partner, and realizes like maybe that word is like how he loses her. Like when she becomes his partner, she always dies. When she becomes his equal, something always happens to her. So his great tragedy is like he has to be a solo conqueror. He has to be someone that is doing this on his own. And I think he gets like, he hears that word and he's like, well, I gotta end this for her sake. I think he's a tragic villain.
So you think that sympathetically
he gets, that way she doesn't achieve the greatness that causes her to be gone in that timeline.
Wow.
I think we find out later
Sympathetic Kang.
that Kang, well, think about how we played him so far. Look at He Who Remains. He's a fun little puckish Shakespearean guy that you're like, don't end him, he's the one good one. And then even in Quantumania, they have like this guy saved us all, and like, yeah, he's this horrible person, but look what he was able to do. And then obviously Victor Timely, other than like his like a little mischief, is a very sympathetic character. I think Kang has to be somewhat of a lover in order to make the character work, because if he's going to travel through time as a conqueror, something must keep him ambitious, and I think that he wants to be able to be with her, so he tries through different timelines to find a way, but that's the thing that always makes it not possible.
I love that. That would be such a shock.
Right.
I'm going Nicholas Sparks on him. I'm great love.
I'm wondering if there was like a TVA before Kang that like OB and whomever had created, and Kang discovers it. I think Ravonna was a part of that original TVA, and because she led the army, and that's what he need. Kang needs this army of Minutemen to help conquer Goliath and like get his like plans in motion. And he realizes like, now that I've done all that, I can't keep her in charge because she has too much power. I can't keep her in charge knowing everything she knows right now, so I gotta wipe her memory and make her feel like, no, you've always been working under me. You've always been doing it this way because I'm changing everything to hide from all the other Kangs.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that memory wipe stuff in a second. But hey, I just want to say, be sure to check out nerdriot.shop, where you can always grab the latest, the greatest new Rockstars gear. Check out our new line of merch inspired by the new season of Loki, including this shirt that I'm wearing right now that is accurate. We are all going to die at some point, but it's a little bit more timely. An unintentional pun for our friends in Loki season 2.
Can
Grab
I
a
show
shirt.
him a shirt?
What?
Can I show him a shirt?
Yeah. Brandon also has a super secret shirt.
You want to see a super secret shirt? This is our Marvel shirt.
There it is.
Whoa! Look at these flirky babies.
My favorite thing is what you're about to reveal, I think.
Yeah. So like you can see
Take
they
it
have.
off.
Wait
Whoa, wait for it. You can see they have like,
Oh.
you know, this one's got Monica's little things. It's got Carol's little things. This guy Kamala's little things, right? But the best part of the shirt. Boom, baby! Whoa!
They're full 3D cats.
Oh,
Flirkins.
That's right.
just living inside of Brandon at all times.
Yep,
Yeah.
3D.
Yeah, baby.
That shirt's not available, but it will
Not
be
yet.
soon.
It's coming very soon.
Keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, get in time for the Marvels.
Yeah, there
Someone's
you go.
going to see that movie.
I think there's some.
I think it's
We're
gonna
not
do
talking
better
about it
than
in this show,
everyone.
but there's some really interesting stuff coming
Yeah.
out in the rumor mill about the Marvels that I'm curious to know if it's real. Support
Ties
the
into the
channel.
end of this.
It does. Support the channel and check out our great merch options over at nerdriot.shop. And don't forget to subscribe to all 3 channels in the new Rockstars network. That's this channel, the Breakroom, New Rockstars, the Deep Dive. You
Heard
get
of
it.
them.
Okay, so we were talking about memory wiping. Now, the next question I have is like, how often has this happened? Was that what we saw the first time it's happened? It seems maybe like it because Miss Minutes was like, are you sure about that? And is wiping everyone's memories of the TVA like a little bit of a, when you break the seal, you can do it as many times as you want now? Because it feels like one of those moral things where it's like, well, wiping everyone's minds is a horrible thing to do, and I can't do that morally speaking. And then you're forced to do it for whatever reason, and then you're like, well, I've already
That
done
kind
it
of happened, and they don't have
once.
really a lot of memory anymore anyway.
So there's like eras of the TVA. There's the
Right.
Kang era where he's a little bit more prominently featured, and then something happened we do not know that caused him to hide behind the timekeepers and wipe everyone's memories. So that's part one of my question. Is like, how often do you think that this is kind of happening?
Well, it's really tough because they still, and Maud brings this up a lot, and I agree with her. Like, they don't explain, like, do they ever leave the TVA? Do they have apartments? You know, Mobius, Renslayer, do they go to sleep? Do they ever sleep? And there's
That
this
one guy sleeps.
There's this, yeah, that one guy sleeps. He's sleeping all the time. Well, there's this weird thing that really hit me this episode too, where Sylvie says clocks don't tick in the TVA, right? She says that line to Mobius when he's kind of like, he's like, let's go get some pie. And she's like, what are you doing? There's stuff going on. We need to move now. But to you guys, there is no time. So it doesn't matter. You have all the time in the world to just sit around and do nothing. She says that, but they're very, all those signs are very concerned with time. Like all the key lime pies are like, you have 17 minutes.
Right.
But they're not keeping track of time. The check your pruning stick every 647 minutes. But they're not keeping track of time. So what does that all mean? And are those weird leftovers from a time when time did exist in the TVA, but they're not tracking it?
Well, but time has to, in some way, exist in the TVA because Loki is going through time.
Right, but that's the only
They said
place
that it wasn't possible.
Yes, and the only place that is possible is the TVA because time travel we know on like Earth or whatever doesn't work like that. You create branch timelines and you screw with things. The TVA is the only like linear time that
Which
moves
is why I think
forward
it's
to
outside
backwards.
of time.
Right.
I think the TVA physically is outside of time. That's how they can observe time. So I think time doesn't move in the TVA. That's why OB thought it was impossible to time skip. What I think those markers are is their observance of time. So they need to be observant of this thing in 17 minutes on this timeline. This time stick is something that is universally related to all these things. And that's another thing that ties into my OB theory is that the reason his memories don't get wiped is you need him to be that anchor to all time that
Right.
Kang can then bounce all these different versions of himself's knowledge off of. So I think that the TVA is outside of time. I think that they are all able to be removed from time, but he's the centerpiece. I think he was born kind of like Neo in the Matrix. Like he was born in the TVA. He is of the TVA. John's favorite movie. And I think that therefore...
Don't do me like that.
John's got bad takes on the Matrix, folks. Bad takes on the Matrix.
I think that
He deserves it. He deserves it.
I think he's the one. It's only because it's like tied for my first favorite movie, so I was so crushed because I value John's opinions and it hurt me.
John's wrong.
If I didn't value your opinions, I wouldn't care.
That was
you're
your
not
first
you're not
mistake,
some
Coy.
troll on the internet. You actually have opinions I value. But I think he's the center. I think he's the nexus, for lack of a
That's
better
an
term.
interesting way to think about it, because, yeah, in that way they could wipe everyone's memory all the time, but you can't wipe OB, right? Because if he's pulling in memory from everywhere, and they're all operating linearly, then like it's almost impossible to wipe his memory. And yeah, he might take a second, but to your point, he's just
so
pulling
it's
it in from
rendering,
somewhere
so
else.
Like he's
Yeah.
extrapolating all that data.
This is
Right.
the second part of my question. Is OB immune from the time wiping because of something
'cause
like
he's
this?
removed, yeah.
Or is he exempt?
Well,
Is someone saying like wipe everyone's memory, but like
Right.
we actually need his memory intact?
I think it's because
they're the same thing.
I'm really screwed up from him not remembering Victor Timely,
Right.
knowing the name but like not putting a face to it, and that's either Victor Timely looks different every time he meets him, or it just, to your point, it's so much information.
It has to catch up because it
and
seemed
it
like he
was
got
wiped at
familiar
some
with him.
point, but it comes back.
I think it got familiar.
Right.
I think there even could be an element of that. Victor Timely had to get to the point where his acknowledgement of him is like, oh right, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Like it has to because of all that data.
Yeah. And there's also the idea too when they reboot Miss Minutes and the voice we hear on the computer is someone else, right? Like time doors open or whatever, temporal aura accepted. Who is that guy, right? Like that is remnants of whatever the
old
TVA
TVA
was
was.
before Kang gets in and inserts Miss Minutes into it. And like I think if OB was ever wiped, it was at that moment.
And I think
he
Miss
remembers
Minutes-
everything from then on. And other people are getting wiped willy nilly. You get wiped. You get wiped. You get wiped. But not OB. Because they do.
Well, and it
need
goes
him.
back to our conversation earlier. It's like, well, maybe OB's not a person. Maybe he's a creation.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a temporal aura, so he can't be the person who sticks his head into the machine.
Right.
You know, maybe those are all the reasons why.
He should
I definitely don't
can.
think he's human.
Do.
What do you take of the handshake with Victor Timely? Them touching. Because we saw how
I didn't
powerful
take
it
anything
was.
special from that.
Well, we saw how powerful it was, right? On Lamentus 3, when Loki and Sylvie touched.
Yep.
And like the branch timeline went boop, 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 boop. It spiked, right? And then and Hunter B-15 is like, I've never seen it spike like that before. When they shook hands, OB and Victor Timely, you know,
I saw it as the
Sylvie has like a
completing
look.
Ouroboros.
She's like,
I saw it as
They've
a
just made
completion of
big
the circle.
circles
Yeah,
with
yeah.
their
Yeah,
arms.
it was like wee. No, but I saw it as like completing
That's
the
the
circle, right?
thumbnail.
Like it, yeah, everybody like wee. But I saw it as completing the circle, right? Like that's them gleaning knowledge from each other. That's the book completing itself. That's the knowledge cycling through, which is why that Nexus theory came from that moment. Is that's when they were able to solve the problem together, and I think that's his purpose. Is he's always the center of the timeline.
Well, there's some interesting stuff too, because we haven't talked about one of the MacGuffins of this episode, which is like the timely device that people have been comparing to, sort of looks like the Kang time chair or whatever. And he's like, I can stick this in and maybe it'll work.
Let's all make up a name for it because we can't remember off the top of our heads. The Weaver Opener.
The Weaver Opener.
Or
okay,
chair,
so
$20.99.
Okay, so I can't do both of those.
The Thread Extractor.
The question is like, so Victor Timely has invented this thing back in the 19th century. It's not in the handbook. It's not in the guidebook.
Yeah.
But in
and he needs it for his own loom, which is way more
rudimentary.
Yeah.
And in episode 3, he sort of says like, well, I would be doing so much better if I wasn't. Look at my surroundings.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to work with here.
Shavings.
So, like, how does he have that piece of technology that is more advanced than stuff from the TVA, and why isn't it in the book? And maybe that's just like writing.
The loom he shows at the World's Fair, is that a total con, or is it doing something?
I think the loom is a very rudimentary prototype for what the big loom is. I think it evolves into that loom. But I think
here's the problem.
Here we go.
Glasses are off.
Here we go.
Now he's vexed.
Is this actually the worst Marvel show?
In episode 3. After he does the demonstration, he sells the loom to the guy. He walks over to the bar and slips that guy money and puts it under his hat.
Right.
And then he walks out of the bar and it explodes. And so it's like, how much of that was a con? He wouldn't purposefully blow up his own technology if it was real.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm a little fuzzy with that.
And then we see the weird pants, right? The
pants don't work.
Well, even when he shows the Weaver Ornamentum to OB in this episode, he under his breath he's like, "It's a prototype." You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is almost like, is it real? Is all of this like a thing?
Well,
and the fact that
we never got to see if it works or not.
That's true.
Right, and the fact that he was like, "Well, I need to be out there in case something goes wrong." Now you could argue that's him deciding like, I'm going to be a hero.
Yeah.
I got to be brave. Or is it like he's
or
like,
was it
I need
Eric?
to be out there because this is not going to work. I'm going to like do something.
We don't realize that the mom spaghetti moment was actually him getting the time powers, that he conquers time.
He wants to do.
Literally,
he's
he's absorbed cosmic radiation.
I have become time.
He also gets spaghetti just like his grandson. Like they'll
true.
literally go out the same way as Reed. Maybe
Or
that's
his
him.
great
grandfather.
grandfather?
No, he's from the 1800s.
Yeah.
No, but
Reed's
isn't Franklin Richards a Kang?
Yes.
Right?
Nathaniel Richards
Richards.
is old.
Franklin's the son.
So it would be it would be Reed is older than Nathaniel.
In the comics, I was saying in this time, Victor
It's
would
the
be
opposite.
an 1800s version of.
Gotcha.
Right.
But you're
don't know.
you're assuming Victor was actually born in the 1800s and not born in the future.
Right,
Stolen
and then
as a
back.
baby and put
Exactly.
I
I'm
love the
assuming.
baby timeline theory. I think
baby
it's
timeline.
fucking insane.
I love the idea that there's a Kang, right?
Snatching up babies, dropping them off in
space and time
timelines.
with like a school bus full of like just screaming,
Like
some of them are
timeline
green.
story.
Yeah.
He's just
You're
dropping
like,
off
this
babies in
fucking-
timelines.
I can't believe I pulled this Kang job.
this
I
kid.
love the version too where he's doing all of that,
Yeah.
but he's not like tucking a TVA guidebook into
Right,
all
right.
of their bonnets
Well,
or
'cause he
whatever.
doesn't want
Only
them
good
all.
ones get it. Only the right ones. He's gonna
You just
prove their
need
worth.
them there. It's like you're making
watches.
it's like you're making sourdough bread, right? You gotta let it.
You gotta
proof
keep
for a while.
feeding. You gotta keep feeding the
Is that
starter.
a
You
good
don't know when
Kang?
you're gonna
All
need
right,
the
that's a
bread.
good Kang.
Yeah,
You
this
get a
Kang,
book.
we're
You get a
gonna
book.
dump out this Kang.
I don't
This
trust
Kang's
that
good.
Kang. He's gonna be like a weird like
Okay.
zombie mummy.
He's getting attacked. This Kang's getting attacked while the other Kangs are at the
whole mess.
the arena cheering. They're like, "Hey, stuff's popping up at the arena." He's like, "Fuck, I'm driving the baby bus. This sucks."
We've gone off the rails a little bit. I do want to bring it back to this episode. Victor Timely makes the very bad, in my opinion, decision to try to fix the loom. He's a guy. He's a man. Loki, as proclaimed earlier in the episode, is a god.
Yeah.
And he seemed like he was going to go out there.
And
so now,
if I'm correct, there's trailer footage. Isn't there like a trailer footage of Loki out on that bridge?
so there is some trailer footage
Yeah.
of a suitless
Loki. Yeah,
Loki
that's what I thought was about
out
to happen.
on
this episode.
the bridge. We don't know if that's real. Shit
Right.
shows up in
I would
trailers all the
love
time
if
and
they
gets
just,
cut.
Like, yeah, we got him on
Well,
the
and
tape.
this episode showed us that they use different angles.
Yeah.
In trailers than for the final show. The
Sure.
like "We Are Gods" line was read completely differently in the show than how they kind of portrayed it in the trailer.
Famously, every single crow shot in any Marvel trailer always gets cut.
When are my crows going to show up in their Marvel properties?
So that's my question, I guess, is like, is the loom broken now? Are we beyond repair here? Some people in the chat were asking, like, was the TVA fucked now? And if not, who? I mean, I assume Loki is probably the next man up,
episode
right?
1 established that Loki has been removed from time, right? He pruned himself for the sole purpose of being removed from time so he could get pulled back in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if him being pulled back in to the TVA, not to a timeline, right? He has since gone to a branch timelines. Yeah, and he went to the sacred timeline too.
Branch timeline.
But like, if that reset his alignment, I don't know. But like, he is a character that has established to have been removed from the timeline at some point.
So you don't think it's any Frost Giant stuff or any Frigga magic stuff
that brings it back? No, I think what's going to happen
the events
is
of what's happened this season already makes him a little bit more.
Yeah,
hardy.
I think that this moment in time happened, and he will be able to like reconstitute himself in like in the past and like be like, oh, let's redo it. You know what I mean? And he can skip forward and back again.
I think time stays broken and everything's about to get real. I think going forward, the time loom has shattered. I think disparate timelines are all colliding. I think incursion events are coming. I think different timelines.
Is the TVA destroyed?
So what do? They just smoke cigarettes while they watch the timeline.
I think they
unravel?
have to find ways to like mitigate loss. So basically, I think that people end up in different timelines. I think that
they get like rebooted to their sacred selves or whatever.
Places. I think all sorts of like. I think we see Fox characters interacting with Marvel characters, Sony characters
in this show.
I think the end of this show is them dealing with the ramifications that allude to that, and then I think the end of the Marvels is they're dealing with it, and then I think Deadpool is fully addressed.
And then Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds are watching this finale, and they're like,
"All right, guys, we gotta go.
They took our lunch.
No, I think
we're gonna do that now movie.
I think Deadpool 3 is the consequences of this moment.
Okay,
all come into play. And you have to end timelines, and so I think Deadpool accidentally kills the Fox universe.
Yeah.
I think it's what's coming. I think that time doesn't fix itself. I think Loki isn't able to solve it.
Interesting. Okay, a couple more ancillary questions before we wrap things up today. One is, again, going back to that first moment in the episode where they're sort of talking about, hey, you were instrumental to the Multiversal War, blah, blah, blah. What was Ravonna's role in the Multiversal War? Because when we see her in that flashback, she's wearing like hunter clothes. So maybe she's Hunter A1 or something like that.
She was A23, John.
Pixar's Ravonna.
She's A23. It's the issue.
Oh, is that true?
She showed up in Avengers 23.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, then I take it all back.
I watched the breakdown.
Well, was she one of the original hunters?
I took it to be.
And then, sorry, to further that question, like, what was Miss Minutes' role in the Multiversal War, if anything?
I think I read that moment because like Miss Minutes says like you commanded the armies or something like that. Yeah, she was a hunter. She's high up. She's leading the armies. She helps the Minutemen do what they got to do. Helps control Goliath. I think Miss Minutes was there solely as like a vizier to Kang, right? And was just helping Kang do Kang's thing. It was not as instrumental at the TVA yet. And it's like at that moment, I think Protocol 482 was like, we're installing you into the TVA system. You're wiping everyone's memory, and we're going forward from here. And this is now my TVA. It's no longer Ob's TVA.
Because speaking of trailer footage, we know Ravonna's been pruned. We see a shot of her in the void in some trailer footage. So she's probably on her way back to
And in theory,
the
if
Citadel.
she controlled Goliath once, she's going to ride Goliath
we don't know.
back to the Citadel.
We don't know if she did. That's kind of what we're thinking.
Yeah.
I think the multiversal, or sorry, what's the war called? I slipped my brain just now.
Multiversal War?
Okay, I'm not wrong.
The War of 1812?
I think that is what the Kang Dynasty is. I think we see that war, and I think that movie takes place around Loki timeline, after, before, filling in all these holes, if that movie gets to get made. I think Kang Dynasty will be a filler companion piece to all of this timeline stuff, so where you see to scale the TVA get formed and like all the things of these mysteries.
You heard it here first. Kang Dynasty going to be a filler Avengers
Filler
movie.
film.
Just a filler movie.
I want like that to be the true, right? It's the Multiversal War, and like whatever character doesn't get to be in it,
It'll get filler.
we'll just say like it's Shang-Chi for this point. He's just like driving in San Francisco, and he's like, hey, my watch stopped.
Carrying on. That's it. That's the only plot.
Because what does all this mean for the street level heroes, right? What's going on for them?
I think filler in this case is every single one of these questions, because this show can't answer all these questions in 2 episodes. I think they're saving it for Kang Dynasty. I think it's a build up to that as a time element, and then I think Secret Wars is fixing and rebooting.
They're saving it for Kang Dynasty, pending legislation.
If that movie gets to play, then it'll be that, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't have this on my question list, but is one of the things that was put in our Slack was is this Marvel's out from Jonathan Majors?
Could be.
If they need to do a recast or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, they obviously have. They said that we would see Jonathan Majors in 3 episodes.
I believe that's
That was
true.
the rumor. That was the rumor.
I also was
He's only
hearing
been 2.
rumors that maybe it'll be in, I don't know, 4.
Well, and there's no way you wrap up the show, right, without.
Yeah, I don't think there's 2 episodes without another time.
I don't think they have any immediate plans to replace the actor or anything like that. And, long term, they're probably got some treatments for Secret Wars. People working on scripts.
I mean, there's directors
director
in talks.
attached.
Yeah, I don't know what. I mean, they just pulled so many dates, and things got moved a full year, and then they took Major's movie off the schedule altogether. Yeah. So I don't know how things look for even moving forward with anything, much less the things that have already been kind of blocked out.
I don't think they'll balk from Secret Wars. I think that's still going to happen, right? I said this when they announced the title Kang Dynasty. I'm they can change the name of this movie, right?
Yeah,
this is a name they're using now because they've just introduced Kang. This is 2021, right? They've introduced Kang and Loki, and they're we're going in on Kang. It's gonna be great. They could change that title, and Doom could still get us to Doctor Doom could still get us to Secret Wars as easily as Kang can, right?
Comics.
Yes, yeah. So it's they could change their mind. I don't think they're going to. I don't know. If he's convicted, yeah, sure, get him out of there.
I mean, I suppose I don't know what a sentence is for what he allegedly did, but he could be in jail. Yeah. Okay, last question.
This has been Legal Corner with
such a dark.
So speaking of such a dark,
this
episode was kind of fleshy.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of TVA employees get crushed.
Oof, man. That was rough.
And we saw a side of Miss Minutes that we maybe knew was buried down there the whole time, but had not maybe reached the surface. Super fucked expression from Miss Minutes. And so we were talking before the show, where do we rank Miss Minutes among just the most sadistic of MCU or Marvel villains?
I mean, she is a computer program,
right?
And they're only as sadistic as you make them, right?
But she has full sentience, and
sure. But she can't rewrite her own code, or can she?
She's seen through all time, always. She's sadistic. She's
experienced. Not to be fair.
It's a little bit of Ultron where he hopped on the internet and he was like, "This is bad." She was I've traveled through a lot of time.
I've seen everything
people
go around.
suck."
I was gonna say she could see what all of those hunters had been searching for on the internet. She's like, "These are some filthy assholes."
Tim Pad is sticky, and she's out.
They gotta die. I mean, yeah, pretty sadistic, right? Now you can argue Docs, who bombed a bunch of timelines,
killed billions.
Billions.
Trillions is really what it would be if we were doing the math.
That's pretty bad.
I'd say up there would be Ultron in his glee.
Sure.
I think he was enjoying himself. I don't think a lot of the villains we've seen have been blindly gleeful.
Right, because usually they have a reason to kill.
Right. And Ultron could, there's probably more. I don't know if there's more efficient ways to blow up the planet than picking up a city and
dropping
dropping
part
it.
of the planet on itself.
I mean, that's pretty efficient.
Tiamat was. I mean, I guess that takes millennia to have enough people die in order to hatch.
Yeah, and Tiamat's just kind of keeping things moving. People gotta die. People can't just live.
Right.
People gotta die.
We were throwing around Ego before.
Ego. Yeah, Ego, who convinces his own child to come to the planet that is him, show him a whole museum of their mother that he changes every time for whoever's going to be there.
Yeah.
And then the second they can't handle a little bit of celestial energy, he's like, in the bone pile with you, buddy.
In the bone
Also,
pile.
I'm keeping the bone pile. We can dump the bones into space.
Weird.
I feel like Ronan the Accuser took great pleasure in killing. He relished in killing Drax and was like, I look forward to not remembering you, just like I don't remember your family. There was a sadism there.
Whoa.
That was a glee in his accusing.
That's pretty dark.
Yeah.
I mean, the Eternals are pretty dark. They just sat back and laughed.
That's true.
generations of people get wiped
Atom
out.
bomb.
Didn't raise a finger. Like, sorry.
On that super chill note, that's going to be it for us today.
Whoa!
Thank you so much for watching. On Monday,
Tell me.
so excited for this show. We're doing our Doomsday show again, and I fucking think it's 11:59. So we're going to be talking
I think
all
it's
about
12:01
how
at this
close
point.
we are to the unraveling of time. It may be 12:01. So that's on Monday, and then we'll have some other great break room content for you next week, including a lot on episode 5 of Loki. Check out the channel this weekend where we dive into episode 7 of The Boys. That was a fun conversation.
Gen V.
Yes, Gen V, which is a very good show.
Yeah. We talked about episode 7 of Gen V, which came out last night. Sick is the name of the episode, and also our discussion is pretty sick.
A good penultimate episode.
Good penultimate episode.
It
We're
was
excited.
the ending. Good.
Yeah.
For the end of
Yeah,
that show.
I mean, we're a week away from the finale of Gen V, which I think ties pretty directly into season 4 of The Boys. So I'd catch up and watch it. 'cause it was a
Very
show.
good. Very
I
good.
think it is literally a soft cliffhanger to kick off Boys season 4.
Wow, wild. You heard it here first.
Saucy.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Give us a follow, give us a like, give us a subscribe. I don't know what to do, you guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.
Bye.